y'all, welcome back to the channel. I hope y'all are doing super well. So today I am going to be doing something a little bit different. This is not going to be a residential lot. This is going to be sort of a community lot type of thing in the world of Forgotten Hollow for the vampires. That's right, I am creating an abandoned church that has been taken over by vampires for them to use really however they want. This is something that I was inspired by. Originally, I was inspired by Miss Griffey. She had a build where it was a vampire tiny home, and she included a graveyard on the side. And so I was going to do something like that, but I've also been reading a ton of Stephen King lately. And the book that I've been reading actually features a lot with a church. And so I was kind of thinking, why not build a church on that lot and have the graveyard next to it and sort of have it be really abandoned on the inside and, very creepy, very spooky. I love it. This is the kind of stuff I absolutely love to do. I was able to get really creative with this one, and I'm really, really pleased with how it turned out. I can't wait to play around and have the vampires come and have meetings or whatever they want to do in here. I just think it turns out really, really cool. But here I am working on the exterior of the church. I toyed around forever with this steeple to try to get it to look exactly right. I end up going with a little bit higher of half walls. That's what I've got right around the steeple roof that I've put on there to where it kind of clips into the roof a little bit. You'll see that here in a minute. It did take a lot of trial and error to get this roof right on this church. This is actually probably the third time of me doing it that I've cut out. So this is the final version that I end up going with. Like I said, I made the roof a little bit taller to where it kind of clips into the roof a little bit, but it doesn't look too bad. And if you don't really pay attention, you don't really see it. But I have just recently gotten vampires, and so I've not really had a chance to play around in Forgotten Hollow very much. It's such a cool world. I love it so much. I love it so much. I love all things creepy. Like I said, I've been reading a ton of Stephen King lately. I can't wait for Halloween, and I was going to save this for a Halloween build actually, but I was like, you know what? I love it. I'm going to put it up. I just couldn't wait. Don't worry. I will have all kinds of spooky builds for you all come Halloween, but yeah, just trying to figure out the roof here. I put this, I think it's called plaster, is the swatch for the side of the church. I was gonna use brick or stone or something that looked a little bit, more dark and creepy, but this like white faded, it looks like faded bricks to me, and so I was like, yes, I've got to use that. But this church I primarily use white on the outside, and then the inside I use a lot of different swatches to try to make it look old. And when I say old, I mean like it was once pristine, but it's been abandoned and is kind of worn down. So it's not just completely decrepit. Like I use a few different swatches of like, I think one is from like City Living, like one of the budget City Living swatches. So we'll get to that. You'll see. But yeah, I picked those cathedral, like rounded top windows. And then I put a little window just up above as a little bit of an accent. And I was going to make a little porch, not really a porch, but just a step up into the church. Use those black stairs and the black Victorian railing. This was pretty much just an excuse for me to use all of the vampires, all of the vampire pack that I just recently got actually. So I was really excited to dig in and start using this, but I go to town with those cracks, let me tell you. I went a little bit crazy, but I think it looks really, really cool. I'm really proud of it. But yeah, just trying to figure out a few things on the exterior, and then I'm going to go inside and start putting some swatches on the walls. Originally, I toyed around with this a ton. I was going for those wood panelings that I've got on that back wall right there. Those came from Spooky Stuff, which is something that I bought yesterday, actually. So I'm going crazy with the new packs, but I really like the way that wood looked. I don't end up using it for the entire thing. I think I do leave it on that back wall as sort of like an accent, but I don't leave it for the entire thing. I thought it was a little bit too much. I know wood paneling is probably really accurate for the sort of church that this is, and the old sort of rotting wood, but I decided to go with something a little different. I didn't want it to be too just completely rotting on the inside. So I go with something a little bit different, but I think I do keep that wood floor from, I think it's also from Spooky Stuff. I went back and forth a lot with the floor and the walls, so you're going to see quite a bit of that. I was going to make like an altar sort of thing too, but it ended up not working for me to make like a platform. I couldn't quite get it to work. So instead I sort of made like a partition, like sort of like a Catholic church partition sort of thing going on. Put a couple of columns in there and a couple of spandrels to kind of, set it apart and sort of make the like the speaking, the preaching area, a little bit separate from the rest of the congregation. I'm going to be using churchy terms. That's my background. that's what I grew up. So that's what I'm going to be using for the building of this. But then I went with this sort of like dark wood interior. I think it came with vampires. I'm not exactly sure. I do end up getting rid of it. It doesn't stick around for long. But anyhow, going in and putting a few things in, I imagine that the vampires could sort of, like, they've taken over this old church and they've decided to kind of use it as like a community center, I guess, for lack of a better word. Not a community center, but more of like a meeting hall. Like, this is where all the vampires meet and have their big discussions and, come up with ways to terrorize the other Sims of the world. But yeah, anyway, so I put a bunch of like pews in here and places for vampires to sit. I mean, a bunch of pews, a lot of places. I combined 2 on each thing, and I've got 5 rows, so that's 20 little individual benches that I've got here for these vampires to sit on. But I think they look really cool. I really like the stone. It may not necessarily fit with the overall rest of the church, but it was from vampires and it looks really cool, and I couldn't help it. So this is me, going back and forth with the floors. I'm pretty sure I continue using that the spooky day walls or the floors, but yeah, here I am trying out a few different types of walls, and the one that I eventually go with, I'm pretty sure it's from City Living. There we go, and that red swatch, that's the one that I end up going with. I wanted it to look like, maybe in the last 20-30 years it was inhabited, and now it's just kind of gone to seed, and the vampires have moved in, and that's a really cool thing that I'm really excited to play with. I'm really excited to just generally play in the world of vampires, but especially to use this lot and all the cool things. But put in a couple of little gargoyles, of course, and a few other little nicks and nags. I was gonna try to make an altar at the front, so I used that table originally from Spooky Day to try to make an altar, or what is the remains of an altar, but I think I end up getting rid of it, and I end up going with something a little different. But here I am pulling out no stops with the cobwebs and the cracks and all the holes in the walls. It just, I love it so much. This is so cool. This is my first time really creating something in the vampire things that we've gotten with that pack. I've never done it before. This is my first time, and I just went crazy with all of the cracks and all of that stuff. A few of these cracks I think came from Jungle Adventure. I got that pack at the same time as I did Spooky Day yesterday, so a few of those came from that, but primarily it's stuff from vampires, just to try to make it look as worn down as possible. You can never have too many of these spider webs was my motto for this build, but I think it looks really good. I'm really happy with this build. It's just so fun. But anyway, just putting a few things else on the walls, trying to make it look old, and then I go for a few sculptures. Now, with these sculptures, I was gonna put some inside and try to make it look like, I don't know, like they're guarding the gargoyles are guarding the church, but I decided against it. I do put a couple of pedestals in here and a couple of statues, but I primarily leave that for outside in the graveyard. I thought that would be a better use of this space. I do put one fairy statue inside here on one of those pedestals, and then around her I put a few other like artifacts or things that would be important to vampires. I wasn't exactly sure what that would entail, but like I said, I put a couple of like urns around, I believe, to me, sort of like remains of ancestors or remains of victims, or God only knows, but I wanted to get a little bit creative with it. I just play around with the vampire stuff and see what I've got to work with and see what the vampires would actually use. But put that big portrait of the vampire leader up behind the statue, and then I was gonna put these rose brambles. I thought it looked really cool, sort of like overgrown, but I decided against it, and I do eventually get rid of these. Now I am still having an issue with my PlayStation recording and not cutting out, so if you see a really big jump here in a few minutes, that's what that is. I apologize for that. Hopefully it's getting fixed. I did another speed build today and I didn't have any problems with it, so hopefully this is the last time that we'll have that issue. But I'm putting in a few pots around. I put in a little rug up there at the altar, just like I said, to try to like make something that like maybe these are the remains of their victims, or it's something important to them. I'm not quite sure what that is yet, but we'll figure it out. And I've got those 2 chairs up there. I don't think I mentioned those. Those are sort of like parishioners, not parishioners. like whoever assists the priest, and they sit in the wings of the church. That's the seats for them. And then I put those little poofs up and around as a place, like a kneeling bench sort of thing. And then I put in that spell book. And there's the jump that I was talking about. That's pretty much it for the interior. I really don't change much else besides getting rid of those rose brambles up at the front. But I do put a little awning out over the front steps, and I move those little gargoyles eventually. I think I put them on the very far corners. And I did put a few cracks in the side of the church and a little bit of ivy going up the walls, but that's pretty much all that you miss when the video cut out, so not as bad as last time. But I do put a few rose brambles and a few creeping thorns up at the front of the church, just to try to, my version of dead landscaping for this. But yeah, just trying to put a few things in here to make it look like it's growing up in front of the steps, like that's how old it is. And then I think I am going to start working on the graveyard. So I use that old iron Victorian fence that I will probably never use outside of this world, but it's so cool. It fits so well. I love it. But I'm going to create a graveyard in here to use all of those gravestone statues that we were given with this pack. And I'm going to have a few trees and a few of those statues that also came with this pack, and a few just little creepy things here and there. I had a lot of fun with this graveyard. I've also never really used the terrain tool before, but like I said, I got inspiration from Miss Griffey for a graveyard that she did, and she made this really cool hill in the middle, and I was like, I'm gonna have to try that. So but then I made a little pathway around the graveyard, and then it takes me a little bit to get the terrain painting on the PlayStation is hard. It is so hard to get that joystick to go the way you want it. I envy you all with a mouse. I really do. But it was a lot of trial and error to get this little pathway, but I was finally ended up being happy with it. And then I'm going to go in and make a path up to the church, which I forgot to do. And then I will jump on into the graveyard and start with some trees. Those dead trees, they're so perfect. I love them. They're so great. And then I was going to use that big craggly tree, but it was a little bit too big. And so I end up just putting a few of those dead rose bushes around and about. And I do play around with the terrain a little bit more to try to make the tree sink into the hill a little bit better. I was kind of struggling with that, but I do put some dead grass and some more rose bushes and rocks around and about, and then I will start putting in the gravestones and all of the different statues and monuments around. I think it turns out really great. I'm really pleased. But I size a few of them up just to get a little bit of different consistency with them. The gravestones can kind of tend to repeat, and I didn't want it to look too uniform. I wanted it to be very just kind of stuck in here. Now, whether the graveyard is people who used to go to the church, like way back when it was actually used, or if it's the victims of the vampires, who knows? That is going to be up to me when I start to play. But I put those two fairies as sort of like guardians for the graveyard. I do end up moving them outside the gate. But yeah, this is just me sort of like putting things around and about. Like I said, I didn't want it to be too uniform. I wanted it to be very haphazard. I want it to look very old and very rotting and decrepit, which I think it does. I think it looks really good. But then after I place all of these, I am going to go around and place some dirt around, and then a little bit of dead grass and sort of things like that around the gravestones, like it's grown up a lot. But that, after I finish that, will pretty much be the end of the build. So I really appreciate you all watching and taking the time to check out my channel. I do have a goal this week of having at least 15 subscribers to YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed and you are watching this video and you've enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscription button. It would absolutely mean the world to me. I've been getting so much good feedback on Instagram. I would like to see that same feedback on YouTube as well. So head over and hit subscribe if you haven't. I really appreciate you watching. Leave any comments or suggestions below, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.